So here are a few things that you're going to need a table. I'm in a craft room, so if you don't have an extra room that you can use for your embroidery, you can use a dining room table or a kitchen table, but you're going to need a table. It has to be a sturdy table for you to be able to cut. So this is a choice of cutting board that I suggest because you can cut a large amount of stabilizer at one time. So this is a 35-inch cutting board. It is 23 inches by 35 inches, and it is used to cut your stabilizer that you're going to need. This is the cutting tool I usually use when I'm cutting stabilizer with this mat. This here is another cutting board you can use. I used this for a long time before I went to the bigger cutting board. So this one is a 12 by 18 inch cutting board. You can get this alone and not get the bigger one because it serves two purposes. So you can use this side to cut, but you would need like a rotary cutter. You can use one of these rotary cutters, and it has like a safety feature. If you flip it over, it is padded, and this is an ironing board. But this, if you want to just go with this board, you can, because it will serve both purposes and it doesn't take up as much space, but you can't cut as much material at a time. So, but it is a good option. Next, speaking of irons, you will definitely need an iron. This is a little mini iron that I use. Iron is perfect. You can use a regular iron if that's what you have. So you will need an iron, and anytime you're using an iron, you will need some type of pressing cloth. So this pressing cloth or some type of cloth serves as a barrier to protect your garment against the iron. I would also recommend a cutting tool. This is, I think it's by maybe Fisher, but it's a cutting tool. You can actually get this from like Walmart or Hobby Lobby or Joann's, but it is used to cut paper, and I do not use this to cut fabric. I use this to cut stabilizer. But for the most part, when you're using your tearaway stabilizer, it is a paper product, and your sticky stabilizer, it is a paper product. Now, it is totally optional. This is optional. You do not need it. You can literally put your paper or your stabilizer on this board or on this board, and you can use your rotary cutter to cut it. But you can say I'm bougie. I don't know. I just like making things easy. You will need pens. You don't need a whole bunch of them. Really, you just need one pen. You have one pen, that's fine. If you have a safety pen, that'll do fine as well. But you will need a heat dissolving pen. Now, this is not a regular pen. This is a pen that dissolves with heat. So I cannot remember. I know I got it off Amazon. I just can't remember like what brand or whatever, because I've had this for so many years. But I have the pen, and this pen, it actually came with 3 pens. It was a white one, a blue one, and a red one. I cannot tell you where the other ones are. With refills, and I have your different refills for your pens. So I will tell you, I do not like to mark directly onto the fabric. If I do mark on the fabric, it's a little dot, because even though it's heat dissolving, it still leaves residue. Like the blue one, it may go on blue, but then when you iron it, it's going to turn white. So you'll still see that white mark on the shirt. So I don't really recommend using this on fabric unless it's going to be in a spot that will not be seen. Next, we will move on to the hoops that you would need, or the frames. This one is a 4x4 hoop. This is what you will need for either the teacher shirts or the bigger kids shirts, like a 3T and above. You'll be able to hoop those. And the teacher shirts, they can be hooped as well. So you will need a 4x4 hoop for your teacher shirts and your bigger kid shirts. That's your hoops. For your smaller shirts, like your 12 to 18 months and your 2Ts, you will need fast frames. So these fast frames, they come in 2 different sizes. I don't know if you can really tell, but this one is smaller than this one. These are the 2 sizes that you can use because they fit the whole design in the frame. But with these, it allows you to, this right here, because of the buttons on the shirt and the collar of the shirt, this frame is too big for the smaller shirt. So it will be an absolute struggle for you to try to hoop those smaller shirts. And you risk the shirt coming out of the frame during the embroidery process because it's no way to really truly stabilize it in these hoops. But these fast frames, you need sticky stabilizer for this, and you literally just stick the frame to the shirt and it embroiders it that way. So these fast frames, so you have 3 different hoops that you will use for your shirts. This will be your teacher shirts, bigger shirts, and these for your smaller shirts. Okay. And there's another frame. It's just one smaller than this. And that frame you can use for the white shirts with the logo. Next, we're going to move on to the stabilizers. These are what you absolutely need. This one is your sticky stabilizer, and this is by Sulky. I recommend Sulky. I love it. It doesn't gum up my needle at all. But you have the paper on one side and you have the wax paper that you peel off. And I use this to cut this and size it for this. So your sticky stabilizer is for your fast frames. This right here, Peloton, I do not always use this brand. This is just what I found at Joann's because I needed it quick. Usually my stabilizer, I order it online. I can't remember the name of the company off the top of my head right now, but it's not Amazon. It's the actual embroidery store online that I order my stabilizer from, and it usually comes in squares. I usually buy it like in an 8x8 square because it fits perfectly and I don't have to worry about any cutting because it's already pre-cut. So, but this, I'm using it, but it's a cutaway. So I use this for this frame, use this to cut it, and it goes for this frame. And I also use it in addition to this on this. So when I'm using these fast frames, I use 2 stabilizers. I use a sticky stabilizer to stick it to the fabric, and I use a tearaway stabilizer to give it a little more support because this is so thin. When the needle is tearing it apart, it will it'll make it not as stable. So now this stabilizer here is a must. Like, it is no way you're going to embroider those shirts without this stabilizer. So this stabilizer here, this is I don't know what it's called, but it's a heat stabilizer. It's an iron-on stabilizer. And this is why you need your iron. Because of the fabric that you use, the shirt is a stretchy fabric. So the difference is if I was to embroider on this material here, this material does not stretch. This is a woven material. So if I'm embroidering on a woven material, I will not need this. But because the shirts stretch, and when you are embroidering it, it's not stable because the shirt is continually stretching, and you're going to have a wonky outcome, and it's just not going to be a good looking pattern. The design is not going to come out right because the shirt is stretching all through the stitching process. So that's where this comes into play. This is bumpy on one side because this is the side that's going to be down, and you iron it onto the shirt, and it makes the stretchy fabric act like a woven fabric to where you'll have a better design. So this right here stabilizes the actual shirt to make it act like a woven fabric. But the other stabilizers stabilize any product to make it stable for the machine. Okay. So there's a lot of stabilizer. It is embroidery. It's just a lot that goes to it. And these are just your steps as in prepping. You need 505 spray. 505 temporary adhesive spray. So you use the spray to spray the stabilizer to stick to your fabric before you hoop it. Otherwise, your stabilizer can shift, and we don't want that. So you need the adhesive spray to spray on your stabilizer in order for it not to shift when you're trying to place it on the hoop. Is this absolutely necessary? No, it's not, but I highly recommend it because otherwise you're going to be fighting with the moving stabilizer when you're trying to hoop your fabric. And hooping is not easy. It takes skill in order to hoop fabric properly. You also need this grid. I don't know if you can see this. You need this grid. You need it because this is going to tell you whether your design is straight or not. And it goes inside your 4x4 hoop. Okay. And it takes the guesswork. You know, your design is not going to be crooked if you use this grid. And that is pretty much everything. I'm trying to think. That's everything. That's everything you need besides a machine and the thread. One more item I'm going to recommend. Now, this is not a need, but again, I highly recommend it. If you use this usually means you'd have messed up something. You can use it. This is a stitch eraser. And I purchased this off of All Stitch, but it allows you to quickly remove stitches because unfortunately, mistakes will happen. It's called a stitch eraser. I do recommend this because, you know, you may need it, especially when you have shirts that may be out of stock and you have no choice but to remove the stitches and start over. All right, so stitch eraser, allstitch.com, stabilizer, allstitch.com. Placement is very important to make sure your design comes out in the right location, to make sure that it comes out straight and not crooked. So these items here are called placement buddies. So I have the kids one. These are for children's. I don't use this as often because usually with the kid shirts, you can kind of eyeball it to know what the placement is for the kids. I do use this embroiderer's buddy more because it's for adults with placing the logo on their adult shirts. And it's based off the size. As you can see, if you have small, medium, large, extra large, 2X, you have women and men. And this helps to place. I use this when I'm doing the teacher shirts. And it makes sure you have the same place for each shirt each time. This right here is something that I made. I literally just got some regular white paper and I, made little crosshairs and cut it out in the same dimensions or a little bit bigger dimensions of the design. And this is what I use once I place where I'm going to place it. This goes here and then I tape it. That's why I have the tape. So you're going to need some tape. You can re-stick it, but it only re-sticks maybe 10 times maybe. So after maybe 10 placements, I'll change the tape out. Because you don't want it too sticky. Because when you pull it off, you want it to come off easy, but you don't want it too loose to where you lose your place before you actually get on the machine. But this is what I actually stick to the shirt before I put it on the machine to make sure that that it's straight. I also use this when we're doing the crosshairs with this right here. because I know these lines are straight. This is going to let me know whether my design is straight or not. And then these little scissors, and these are embroidery scissors. They kind of curve. And it's to where you can get under there and cut your jump stitches. I think that's it. If there's anything else, I'll jump on and let you know, or while we're going through the shirts. This is helpful, not mandatory. Very, very helpful. It's going to make sure you get in the right place every time. So if you have a teacher that's have all, 5 medium shirts, all medium shirts will be in the exact same location each time if you use this. Otherwise, you're eyeballing it, and you can have you can run a chance of it not being in the right location, being too high or too low. You don't want the design like right on their boob or whatever. This is going to help with that placement. Okay. This is going to help with placement. Like I said, this was handmade. You can use just paper, but I laminated this because I wanted it to last a little bit longer.